Good morning, everyone. Hope everybody's doing well today. Welcome to our school board workshop for October 10th, 2023. This will be a property evaluation. We're going to be looking at Hillsborough County School, basically the sitting and the future use of different property. And I will go ahead and hand that over to Superintendent Ayers.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Combs. Just to kind of intro this workshop, like all of our workshops, this is just an opportunity for the board to provide us direction on a particular topic. Today, Ms. Combs, as you mentioned, it's our school board workshop on school siting and future use. So, you know, just as in all of our workshops, this is really a great opportunity for me and my staff to kind of hear from the board and give us direction as we look to move forward. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our Deputy Superintendent for Operations, Mr. Chris Farkas.
Thank you, Superintendent Ayers and board. This is a great opportunity for us to talk and get a little direction from the board. There's been a lot of talk about surplus property, about concurrency and siting of schools. So we've kind of divided this up into two different areas. One is school planning, so you know how we track planning and what school sites look like. But I also know there's an interest from the board to talk a little bit about surplus property and what that is to affordable housing and some other angles. So we'll kind of make it up in those two parts. Our goal is to keep our presentation short so we can entertain the questions and conversation from the board and make sure that we leave here, as Superintendent Ayers said, with some direction of next steps and what we can bring back to the board from an information standpoint. This is a very large topic. Michelle Orton, our General Manager of Growth Management and Planning, is up here with me. We're going to try to cover a 30,000-foot conversation around it and then look forward to a little direction on what that looks like. So we're going to talk about long-range school planning, as I said, and school district site repurposing and surplus property. So, long-range school planning. Many of you know, because you were on the board, we've actually done long-range planning studies. The first one in 2017, where they looked at the entire district and said, hey, what's coming and what does that look like? In 2020, we did an update. In 2021, we looked at Plant City in particular. Plant City is an area, obviously, that we see tons of growth. We wanted to make sure we focused on that. So you'll see that there is a plan. These are all on the website, so the public can see that as well. But we wanted to make sure that what we track, and Michelle's going to talk a little bit about how we track it, but we have a third party come in and say, are we following it? Are we doing the right thing? Are we making the right projections based on what we track? There are three different main areas of growth, and we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like, but our county is very much subdivided into, as we know, some high growth areas and some areas that have seen a little bit less growth in those areas.
And a little bit about growth management. Growth management works with each of the local jurisdictions, and each of the local jurisdictions are required to send us residential developments for our staff to review. Your district staff sees the development multiple times, from the concept to the land use change, conceptual plans, all the way to the building permit. The school district maintains an interlocal agreement with each of these jurisdictions that requires them to identify and requires us to review the requirements and school concurrency. The Growth Management Department is tracking at this time approximately 1,000 concurrency applications throughout the entire county. Our department tracks school concurrency reservations through our mapping system. Currently, we are updating the development reservation systems, identifying occupied units. So what do we mean by updating or releasing the developments reservation system? When a development is complete and the unit is now occupied, the reservation is released and the generated student is now included in the district's enrollment counts. The release process eliminates double counting of students by differentiating between projected versus enrollment. Currently, staff is tracking approximately 6,000 elementary school students, 3,000 middle school students, and 3,900 high school students. And these are concurrency reservations throughout all of the jurisdictions. We also use CoStar and MetroStudy to assist in this tracking system that we use for Plant City, Temple Terrace, Tampa, and the unincorporated Hillsborough County.
Thank you, Michelle. So in non-planning terms speak, we actually look at who's actually enrolled, but we also do reservations. Like you'd think of that part two of kids that are coming in. We know they're coming based on what's been approved by the county, and once we've gone through concurrency, so we track those kids as well. So what does that look like? Property is very hard to come by. We try to look and project out. This is a big, broad map, and we'll talk about more specifically around there. But you can see it's not real complicated. We've got a bunch of properties in the south. We've got a bunch of properties out by Plant City because we know that's where the growth is happening and what that looks like. So a little more specificity around the school properties. So we own the sites that are at the top, those are school board owned property. South County Career Center goes all the way down there where there's not a lot of growth, or there's not a lot of homes yet, but there's tons of growth headed that way. Waterset, where York is, the backside of Waterset, we're going to get another property that's dedicated. So how does that work? When they do their master plan community, or when they send in for development, they will dedicate a school site. You'll hear people say they give us a school site. That's actually not quite the way it works. They get impact fee credit, so the value of that land is $1 million. That credit goes there. It's impact fees they won't pay when they actually do those developments. So it's not free property, but it is dedicated. It's very important to what we do, and that is definitely a way that we have gotten many sites that we've had there as we go through. We have Rodine Road, Strawberry Crest in front of Strawberry Crest, right to the right when you first pull in, across from Bailey is a site that we have as a future middle school. Manhattan, which is already coming out of the ground. Meacham Farms, we've already promised the community that we will have a Meacham school. That is where our Meacham Farms are currently, that we've seen. That is just over 2 acres. Pinecrest to a K-8 expansion is what we talk about, because there's going to need middle school seats going in the future. North Park Isle, which is Plant City, is another area that we look at. Westlake Drive, which is where we're building our new high school. Bishop Road, which started this fun, and we won't go down that rabbit hole, but Bishop Road is the first time the county said, hey, you can't build because the roads are substandard. We still own that property, and as they provide the infrastructure, that'll be a property that we're able to build as well. Charlie Griffin Road, we have an elementary site up in Plant City, and then the 2 other sites that are in the front of where the high school is on Westlake, which is the middle school and the elementary school, are also there. So those are ones that we already own. Those are our properties. But we also have the developer dedicated properties, meaning they told us they were going to give it to us. They've got to set it aside. We have that first right. So we have that where Plant City Career Centers, we're doing a property trade with the city. Vieira, Berry Bay, Council Growers, and Cypress Ridge Ranch. Those are all areas that we will negotiate with the developer and have those available to us as sites that we can build schools on. So we can never have enough. We're always looking for property. We try not to share that too much, because as the district, that means that the rates go up. We don't want to pay more than we have to for that property. But we're always tracking growth. As Michelle said, there's 1,000 different applications we're tracking, so we know where those are coming from. And the easiest way for us to do that is to look for land around there, knowing that we're going to need to build schools down the road. Because some of those projects are dormant. They get it approved, and they don't start building for a year, 2 years, 5 years down the road. Others, they get it approved, and there's a shovel in the ground the next day. We track what that looks like and when they actually move in to do that, but it's definitely something that there's not one uniform way to look at it. So that is the school site. We plan where the school site's coming. We plan where schools are coming. We have property, never enough. We'll continue to look for it, and we'll bring the board. Obviously, you guys approve all of those, but we will continue to look for that. But right now, for the next 10 to 15 years, we are good as far as property we own and where we can build schools going forward. So the more interesting conversation, some would argue, is what happens next with our surplus property or our site district property. So we knew this was coming before we did the rebounding process. We put out an RFP for community and economic development. What does that mean? It means when we put something out there, we wanted to make sure that we had people that knew what they were doing, who could help us develop any land or any project that we had. So we put out an RFP. Three different firms were selected as approved. Wire Development, Blue Sky Communities, and the Related Group, which has done a lot of the work in West Tampa. All 3 of those sat through a regular RFP committee, were selected. So when we decide, if the board decides, hey, we want to do affordable housing here, we want to do development here, these 3 firms are already approved to go and research that, put together proposals, and the board would approve the best proposal out of those 3 proposals. But it gets us down the road from having a mass of people that want to do it. These people have already been qualified, have done that work, have partners in the community that will help us with affordable housing and had experience doing that as well. So where are we talking about? Where's potential land? So the first slide that we have is smaller sites. These are all 4 acres or lower. A lot of them are property that was either dedicated to us or property that we bought that was near sites, near Sheehide, near Kimball, near West Shore, near McLean, either little vacant lots next to it or parking lots that are there. These are very small, and they're not something that you'd really sell and make a whole lot of money on, but we want to make sure the board knew there are some spots that we have that are smaller in scale properties that are around Hillsborough County. So district sites and repurposing potential. So there's a lot of different options that we have, and this is where we look forward to the board for some input. This is a random list, not a conclusive list. I want to make sure you all know that. This is, sites that are possibilities, not sites that we've actually considered. Many of you know Irwin on Hillsborough Avenue, Brewster that is right next to downtown, ISC that we're currently in now, the Leary building, which is right next to Irwin on Hillsborough, Velasco, and the reason Velasco has an asterisk, we don't own the property of Velasco. Actually, HCC has that property. We lease it for $1 a year. But there's also some group, and I think most of you know, but for any of the new board members, there is a possibility of growth and some trade-off in what that Velasco building is. There's some development and some potential development that's going to be in that area that HCC actually owns that land, even though it's our building. The various school sites we talked about, ROSAC, obviously our downtown building, and there's been a lot of conversation about that. And then also the Rampello Garage is the one. And so that's kind of what we did a couple slides so you guys can see what does that look like. What are the comparables for downtown? What if there's two options we have. There's sale and there's a lease that we could do for either one of those properties. The first comparison is what does it look like from a sale standpoint? Again, there's a lot of factors that go into this. This is just a very broad view of what it looks like. But if you look at what we gave specific address on there, it's about $14 million an acre downtown right now is what they're selling for that site. The parking garage site is about 2 acres, so you can get a basic idea of what that looks like. It's about it's acre and a quarter, excuse me. It's about a $20 million property if it was just face value of what we wanted to do for that parking garage site. What are the other options, though? What if we wanted to lease that site as opposed to doing that? Obviously, anybody that's going to invest a bunch of money is going to want a 99-year lease. They're going to want something that is long-term if they're going to put millions of dollars into that. We've talked to a lot of people to try to get an idea of what this looks like. Not negotiations, just, hey, what does that look like? People that have done this before, obviously every single one of them would rather buy it. It makes sense because they control that. But when we talk about lease, there's a bunch of reviews. The slide in front of you is based from a parking standpoint and what that looks like for that property. It's an $8 million present value. It was started at about $600,000 a year is what we'd estimate on what that rent looks like, a lease, excuse me, looks like. That would equal $8 million. However, if we did a normal CPI, just a normal CPI index for that rent property or lease property would go up by year 30 is about $2.5 million annual cost. So it ends up being more over the cost of that 30-year lease. But finding someone to do that is step one. And then step two would be what the financials are around that. We have not done that because we don't have board direction. We've just had conversations that have people that have like projects and that part of it too. So what does that look like coming out of here? Coming out of here is Chris, Michelle, Superintendent Ayers, we want you guys to look at what that lease option looks like. We want you to look at the ROSAC garage. We want you to look at ROSAC. We've had many conversations over the last 3 to 4 years as to what those steps are. The goal of today would be you guys kind of give us a little bit more as to direction, and we can bring you back real numbers and have those conversations. One last part before we open it up for questions. How do we track and what do we look at affordable housing and what those next steps look like? There's some sub-markets that we looked at, and the print is really small on this one, but I thought it was important for y'all to see what is the market asking price on average in these areas. And they vary from $1,500 a month to $2,500 a month, depending on what part of Tampa you're in. But you think of some basic rules of how much a first-year teacher makes, if they're a single teacher living on their own, and how much rent takes before you pay any of the bills, utilities. This is just the rent part of the conversation. It is very hard to be a teacher in Tampa on your own and pay the bills. And we just wanted to show you, even depending on what part of town you live in, it's worse, but it is a very hard thing to do based on our current. We've talked about it a bunch, about how Tampa has grown and what that looks like. So affordable housing, what that looks like. There's a teacher shortage. It could be something we use for marketing. We've looked at Miami-Dade and some of those other districts that have done that. Miami-Dade put a elementary school in a high-rise building and then gave 3 floors to the teachers to actually teach that elementary school. In talking with them, there's been some lessons learned, some positives and some negatives as to what that looked like, but that's an option. Affordable housing is a great idea. What that looks like, there are some federal rules on what we can and can't do as far as just making it 4 teachers by themselves from a HUD standpoint. But it is, when we talk about employee retention, our housing crisis and the financial issues that we talk about, as we talked about with the release, that looks like we've come to terms with our CTA group. what incredible marketing tool that would be if we can have housing as part of that to draw people from other local districts, but also our own, keeping that retention, that part of it too. So it is a viable solution for us. There are a lot of nuances that go with it and where that location is. Again, the property where we own it versus where we want to do affordable housing is part of it. Again, we have 5 repurposed sites. I want to remind, as part of the rebounding process. We heard from the board at that time they did not want to repurpose those. They didn't want to sell schools. They didn't want to do that part of it too. But we also know that things change. The board changes opinions, that part of it too. So I wanted to make sure that we put that on the table as well, as that we look for direction as to whether we want to repurpose. Again, our plan right now is to have district officials in that building, so we can move people out of Leary or move people out of Velasco and cut down costs from that standpoint. But again, none of those decisions have been made. We look forward to the conversation today to try to answer. And if we don't have an answer, we'll make sure we get it for you. But Superintendent, that's the end of our presentation.
Okay, thank you so much. Today we have 2 board members who are on via, I guess, this program, and then we have 1 out. So if you can please direct if you want to speak to Mr. Porter, and we'll go ahead and start with Member Gray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question, I have 4, and I'm not going to go into yet some planning or some suggestions. I have questions. Page 7, Plant City. Chris, we did buy land by Stingray. Is that included on page 7? The new property that
It is. It's the North Park Isle is the one that's listed on the page.
Okay, I see it. I see. I wasn't sure. Okay.
50 acres, yes, ma'am.
So we have that property. All right. And the second is the K through 8, and this includes Superintendent Ayers. I've been speaking a lot on Apollo Beach for K through 8. I also wanted the K through 8 at Just originally, that Stewart and Just. That would be a marvelous, to me, very applicable. K through 8, we're spending $39 million anyway. Why are we not putting that towards versus a facelift at Just, maybe looking into a K through 8? K through 8, I do believe, for so many obvious reasons, are not only great for the kids' stability, great for the teachers, and also, most importantly, the community, to keep it stabilized. The property at Just and Stewart is very valuable, with a lot of units being built on the, it's the West water, anyway, there's a group.
West River.
Yeah, West River. And that also necessitates the talk with Mayor Castor, who also has tremendous vision for that property, as the Housing Authority does, which I think board members are meeting this week, if not next. Van Ayers, Superintendent Ayers, what do you think about the K through 8s as we look into the 5-year plan? And I have it here. That's actually on our agenda. I don't even see Just on the 5-year plan being addressed. Perhaps that's a good place to remark on, and the K through 8.
Sure. Yeah. So K to 8s are a popular model that our families look at. If you look at Pinecrest, so Pinecrest, Mr. Farkas, similar to Collins, correct? Just with the number of families that are within that particular community to have the middle school seats that are available. So K to 8 is something that we are always looking at. Which just has to be feasible for us and has to make sense. So that is something, I think we're all fans of K-8s, and our goal is to keep students in our school district, and the K model approves to do that.
Yeah, and I get the generalistic, collaboration statement that you just had, I think shared by board members, but point blank, the fiscal responsibility of $39 million towards Just versus putting a K through 8, are we planning that at all, or where are we at, Chris?
So there is not a K-8 plan for Just right now. And the $39 million that we're referencing, what is the $39
million? Yeah, I'm
That was
clear with the $39 million.
Amount of money that we were going to put towards Just in terms of possible facelift. I could be wrong.
We haven't identified that yet. We're waiting for the group and the committee, the Just committee, to kind of give us a some directive. I know that Mr. Young is leading that, and Ms. McCray, but we haven't given a firm budget on what that looks
Yeah,
like.
the task force is meeting, and they're coming up with ideas and plans. So I trust that process for that team and that task force to move forward, and plans for JUST. But the 39 million, that's a number that has not come
Okay,
forward to me,
identified.
nor have I put that number out anywhere.
Okay.
Ma'am.
And some of this has come from the previous superintendent, so that there's a lot of, interval of miscommunication, where one superintendent wanted to do the early learning and possible a K through 8. But nonetheless, I think we need to address that possibility.
Well, and please tell me if there's something that I missed, but I think, once with JUST, there was the former superintendent formed a task force for the process of looking at in the coming years what JUST looks like. Is it early learning? Is it a Montessori? Whatever that. So I want to make sure that we have a task force for a reason, and I want to make sure that process is followed under the direction of Owen Young and Shea McCray.
And Mr. Gray, I also wanted to your point, theory versus practical application. So we've shown that K-8s are something that have been a viable solution to us. York has been part of that. Collins, as we've changed to it. The Manhattan School that you all be naming is also a K-8 in that part too. So I think we've shown that it is a successful model, to your point. And the community, based on just York alone, is a perfect example of where there's tons of charter schools around that area. There's been schools that aren't as full, and we open York, and York is doing well. Missy Leonard's done a wonderful job of creating a wonderful school down there that is full. So K-8 is a model that keeps students here.
And I want to thank both of you, by the way, too, for the presentation. And I know where your heart is, and I know where your head is, but I just wanted to make sure that was perhaps looked at as far as the direction we want to go to. Third, I wanted to ask real quick, the ROSAC, you said the data. Yeah, we looked at that closely. That was under Superintendent Davis. So the data between lease and buying
identifying that is a real draw for families. So I hope that's something that we're talking about. As far as the smaller properties, when you talked about we have plots and lands close to like Shehigh or Williams Middle School, if we're looking at selling those, how does that affect being so close to the schools? What does that look like? What is the guidelines to what we can sell, seeing that it's right next to a school? Tell me about that process.
Sure. Well, there's two parts of it. The first part is the process the board would follow, which would be to declare that surplus property and to sell that. And there's statutes around that and what that looks like, that we could put it out there and you can sell that as a board for surplus property. We have done that before at times. As far as what can be done on that property, that's actually going to be a city or county or jurisdiction issue. So depending on what it's zoned for, if it's zoned for multifamily or zoned for single housing, that will dictate what they're allowed to build on that property. Is that fair, Mr. Porter? That's your area.
That's exactly right. And so typically what would happen is if we sold property and it was zoned for something that the developer or the purchaser didn't want, they would seek a rezoning through the appropriate jurisdiction.
Okay, that answers some of the questions. And then, as far as when we're talking about extra properties and as a board, if you want direction, what that would look like. Personally, when I look at our budget and the conversations we consistently have around, our fund balance versus reoccurring funds and what that looks like when we talk about salary negotiations, it seems like the emphasis is constantly on reoccurring funds. If we were to sell off these properties, that would help our fund balance. Maybe we could allocate some of that money towards the new projects that we're looking at, and I think that's important. But what I would prefer, even though it might not be as much when you look at long term, I would prefer to keep the properties, lease them, and keep reoccurring funds coming into our budget. I know when we have our monthly budget amendments and I sit down and I look at some of the line items, what I'm always surprised by that gives us extra revenue where we make a lot of amendments is our investments in our investment properties. So to me, again, instead of just putting it in our fund balance or towards a one-time purchase, which we would eventually deplete, I think it's important to look at reoccurring funds and use that property to make sure that we're bringing in as much money yearly that we can count on reoccurring as possible. So hopefully that gives you some directions on my thoughts as regards to that. Sorry, my phone's dinging over here. The other question I had is, I know previously, the first year I was on the board, we did make some movement towards ROSAC. And so where are we with that? With the decision that we made, does that have to be redone? Was there a time frame on that timed out? Or where are we with the decisions that we've made on ROSAC? And what would be the next step?
So this is the next step. There's been nothing done as of this point. The last conversation that I had with previous leadership was we weren't moving forward with the selling of ROSAC. And so no other conversations have taken place that I know of. I mean, Superintendent, is that fair?
Ms. Vaughn, I have not given any further direction on ROSAC at all. No. So, I mean, if there's an appetite there, I mean, I would look forward to discussion here today. But yeah, I have not given any recommendation or feedback regarding ROSAC.
But we voted on something that was signed by the chair and the superintendent that means that once we declared it a surplus, there was no other vote needed, correct?
That's correct. The sale will come back to the board, that it's declared surplus, which is what we talked about as the first step of that part two. So if we were going to put it up for sale, we'd obviously have that conversation with the board and bring it back to the board from a sales standpoint. But no steps have been taken since it was declared surplus originally.
But that contract that we voted on to make that first step, is that good indefinitely, or does it have a time frame on it where we would have to go through that process again?
I would look to Mr. Porter. I would think once you declare it surplus, it's surplus.
It's surplus, right. The only action that would come before the board is if the superintendent was making a recommendation to sell it. But that was to look at options at that point. And again, it's been declared on the record that nothing else has been done on that. So.
Okay. And then finally, I do have more questions, but I'll get back in the queue because I know there's probably a lot of questions as well. My last question was, or not question, but really thought process was, I mean, I absolutely love in concept the idea of affordable housing for our employees. But as you mentioned, comparing it to other districts, I think there's a lot of complexities that we'd really need to talk about moving forward. So if that was something we were going to look at, I would actually prefer like an entire workshop just on that specifically, because there's already been questions about how do we keep it affordable? What does it look like for teachers and how do they apply? How do we have preference for what that they apply for? What do we look like for expanding it and making sure that the housing is big enough? So I don't think you're looking for specific direction for that right now, but for me to even move forward and give you more thought process on that, because again, it sounds great in theory, I'd really want to have time where we could really dig down and get more specifics about that.
Ms. Vaughn, I 100% agree with you, and that is definitely something that we would do. Is we would spend some time with the board on something like that because there are intricacies involved with that. So we would definitely have a much more conversation before that would come to fruition.
But thank you for this information. I'm going to get back in the queue. You've answered a good amount of my questions, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Member Vaughn. Member Rendon?
Thank you. So I'm going to kind of piggyback a little bit off of Member Vaughn and the affordable housing piece. I'm familiar with what Miami's done. I'm also familiar with what Brooklyn did. And what Brooklyn did was a little bit different than what Miami did. And they took not only but our teachers, but our first responders, and they carved out an area of the community and that they were able to purchase a home for a lesser cost because of their service that they gave the community, teachers being included. So it was a little bit different there. There was some subsidy that was given to the county for allowing that property be sold for a lesser cost, and that was how Brooklyn did it, just a little bit differently. And then again, it included the first responders. It was a little different process. But now with Miami, what they did was they used 3 floors, and it was rental property, and then it was HUD property. But then there were other floors that people were purchasing or renting apartments for, but the entire building was still owned by the district. Am I correct?
Yes, that's my understanding.
So all of that income is coming in, and all of that income stays as capital dollars.
It does. However you purchase the property, it's the same
Correct.
fees. It has to come back and be used for that.
So as we look for the future and we recognize our fact that our capital outlay tax is always up for discussion, and we're about 4 years out from that possibility of losing that money that has been used as refurbishing our schools, bringing up our schools up to maintenance needs, and still with a long way to go for so many of our schools. I mean, that 4 years is going to come very fast without a lot being still needed or back in that cycle. I would, as well as Member Vaughn, say let's look into it. Again, I fall back on the lease to purchase when it comes to that, because if we own the building, can we own the building and people could purchase apartments from it?
So yes, there's a few different ways they do that. You look at a post-secondary like a USF, where you do a P3, a public-private partnership, where you have another company that kind of runs that and does the administration of that part of it too, and does leasing, everything from dorms to leasing to purchase that part of it too. And we're kind of not in the middle of that. I don't know that we want to be landlords. Obviously, the board direction, that part of it too. But hiring someone to kind of do that work for us is most certainly a viable option. And so the 3 companies we talked about, we would say to them, hey, we want to look at building something where we've got purchase, we've got leases. What does that look like? Give us some proposals. You guys are expert in the field. You've done this before. Go tell us what that looks like. And West River is one that we talked about. Related Group, which is one of the 3 contractors that we have, has done a bunch of work in West River, so they've got experience with that. But I want to reiterate the other 2 groups also have experience in other parts of the country doing affordable housing, doing development, to your point. So yes, we could do any of those things, and we would have experts in the field kind of lead the way of what that looks like and bring that back to the board as viable options.
Okay, so from my point of view, if we could do some more research on that, because I think it's really important to understand if we sell a property, is it 3 years we have to use that money or less?
No, it stays. The capital dollars don't go anywhere. So in theory, if we were going to sell a property, it would stay in the coffers of capital until it was spent. What we'll need from the board, just to piggyback on what you said, is a little more direction. We go to this group, they're going to want to say, which properties do you want to look at? If you want us to be specific on what the feedback is to the board, we want to look at the Rosac Garage, Rosac, and Irwin, or whatever. I'm throwing names out there, not suggesting. but they're going to want to say, hey, give us the properties that you want us to look at, and then we'll give you the viable options based on the market around there and what that looks like to kind of give you some proposals. That's what the expectation is from their side of the house, which I think is realistic to give us real numbers.
Well, from my personal point of view, I don't want to eliminate a school. I think a school has got those, we've got our statutes around them that really have to protect what that school is needed in that space. Some of our buildings that we could work around that are not being utilized as student use. I think we could go ahead and look at what those options are as from my point of view. I do want to, address the K-8 issue. I think it is something that families are very excited about. I also think we don't have long-term history. I don't think we have long-term history on exactly how a K-8 looks for a student when they get in maturity-wise and get into college, and things that if they are going and working in a school as a K-8, what did they miss during those 3 years that we went to a middle school model? Why did we do that to begin with? What are those things that they are no longer getting that are they lacking then in high school long-term that they are then lacking in college? That developmental stage of 6th through 8th grade is very key for students to recognize that relationships, that conflict and resolution, how they handle that changes in the classrooms, how they handle, they get engaged in extracurricular activities. It's the beginning of all of those things. We have not done this long-term enough to have that research to jump into 50 K-8s. Now, is that a viable model that our community would like us to look into? I agree. I also think we have to look at, I'll use Apollo Beach as an example of that. Apollo Beach Elementary is sitting in a flood zone in a state where we are constantly losing our coastline. But yet we have a middle school down the block that is not at capacity, that we could possibly look at that as becoming the K-8 that's already built out as a structure to be able to house all the middle school needs that an elementary school does not. So I think if we're going to look at K-8s, I think we look at existing buildings and merging that to be able to make sure we're utilizing our buildings to the best of our capacity. I think we don't want to eliminate schools and the use of those schools. I also would like us to look at, Superintendent and Mr. Farkas, I'd like to look at, if we're going to be repurposing some of our schools, expanding either Brewster or, I want to say it's Brewster or Levy, our adult schools, into some of our repurposing areas of our schools that we were just designated as repurposing. We need to look at how we are addressing our individuals with disabilities. How are we preparing them for life? What opportunities are we giving them for the next steps? We need to look at those grants that we have at our disposal so that we are purposing some of our students we have not addressed in any of this. And that is key importance, that we're going to give them an opportunity along the way. So I would ask that we look into some of those situations that we are not talking about right now. And I think we are missing out on a large population that we've got to give them a boost up. The state does not have the funding for them after our years, and so we need to make sure what we're doing with them is useful and purposeful so that they have a future in the next step of their life when they leave our schools. I see a lot of the land use and the purpose, and a lot of it's going to be in the growth areas out in the east side, southern east side of the county. They're building faster than we can keep up with, hands down. I appreciate the fact that we have planned for property, but I think our next step is we've got to give the board information on what's the next step of how we're planning the buildings, because we need to understand what money we need, how we're using our money and moving forward, because it's great that we recognize we have growth and we recognize we have property, but that doesn't put butts in the seats. And we have kids that are going to need those seats very shortly. So if we could move in that direction, I'd appreciate it. I think that was all.
And just one quick thing, we'll definitely bring you back that information. The ESE need for rehab and what those next steps are, some of the other options that go through there. We've talked about is that McLean will be one of those options as we talk about moving ESE into that part of it too. But to your point, Ms. Rendon, it's impossible to get everyone all over the whole district to McLean. So having other places where we can do that is
absolutely at least a couple areas where we can build some CTEs that giving these guys a lift would be huge. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Rendon. Member Washington?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and also Michelle and Chris, thank y'all for making a real good presentation. Had a couple of questions here and statements. As we sit here, and I've always thought about this, what is affordable housing? You know, we throw that word around a lot about affordable housing. What is affordable housing? What percentage, how much money is involved? And that's some of the things that I think we need to really look at, Mr. Farkas. So I suggest from this is to have a workshop on affordable housing, because I'm quite sure a lot of people, we don't know a lot about affordable housing, but we throw the word around a lot, and it's so important for people to understand. So I would recommend that we have a possibility of having affordable housing workshop so we can understand, because if we're going into that as a school system, we all need to pretty much understand what we are involved with when we are doing affordable housing. Next is I'm looking at the school board owned properties. I see there we have about 578 acres that we're going to use, Mr. Farkas, I guess, for building new schools in the near future. We do have one small acre, which is Meacham, and that's 2.13. I don't know if can we build a school on 2 acres?
We can. We certainly can. You look at what Rampello is. We've got a K-8 on just under 3. So, yeah, we can. You go up instead of going out in that part of it, too, and have it. But, yes, sir, that is – we wanted to make sure we kept it in the core area, and that's why Meacham's location-wise is there. But, yes, we can do it. It'll be a non-traditional school. It's not going to be a 1,000-person school. It'll be a smaller school and probably 3 stories in that part, too. And just as a reminder to the board, kindergarten and first grade has to be on that first floor or have a dedicated stairwell to do that. That's our SREF standard to do that, too.
It might be helpful if you gave the board sort of the acreage needed for elementary, middle, and high schools generally, because obviously there are going to be some exceptions, but that might give some frame of reference.
It is. So, thank you. That's a good point, Mr. Porter. So, traditionally, we look for 50 acres for high schools because of all the fields that go with it. We look at 30-plus acres from a middle school standpoint. We look at 10 acres traditionally if we're going to have an elementary school that has the land that goes with it. So, it's a great question. Is 2 acres enough? It would be a non-traditional school. There's not a play field, and things like that. There'd be a smaller turf area. But you see that at Rampello. We've got the playground that's right across from our offices that we see every day. But usually, traditionally, 10 plus, 30 plus, and 50 plus are kind of our rule of thumbs. K-8s are we've only built 2 of them. We've converted all the rest of them. So you've got Turner Bartels, which was an elementary and a middle school, or you've got Woodson K that was an elementary and middle school as a non-traditional way, as opposed to Manhattan or York, where we actually build it as a K-8, and it's a little bit smaller area, but still has all the amenities that the other K-8s have.
And Mr. Farkas, so Sulphur Springs, I know years back, I may have been an area director then when we made Sulphur Springs a K-8. What is the acreage there? About what? Maybe 3 or 4 acres or what?
Probably a little bit bigger than that, but it's smaller. Yes, sir. That's why there's no huge gym. There's no track there. All the things that we just talked about, there's not. None of that exists, as you know, at Sulphur Springs.
Oh, okay. And back to the K-8, going on with K-8, I think K-8 is something that people are hooked on now, being K-8, because when we first put in K-8 in Hillsborough County, we did it because we wanted the students to stay together from kindergarten all the way through 8th grade when we did it at Sulphur Springs. But remember, you had a great question. You had a great point. What is the progress of it? How is the accountability? Are we successful with K-8s? That's what, at the bottom of my mind, that's what I'm thinking about. Because K-8 is a great solution to keep the kids together. But are we successful with K-8s or we're not? I think that's something we need to look into. After the kids leave K-8 and going to high school, are we successful? Going back to I want to add something to Member Vaughn when she was talking about Rosyth. We did say that we were not going to lease or do anything with Rosyth during that period of time. I think it was about 3 years ago when we made that statement, or when we voted on it. Am I right, Jim? When we voted on it, we said we were not going to do anything with Rosyth.
I don't know that the board voted on it. I think you voted on the resolution.
We didn't vote on it.
The superintendent didn't really do anything else with it.
Okay.
He wasn't going to pursue it at that time. And I think the current superintendent.
Yeah, and that's been about probably 2.5 years ago, right?
Yeah,
we had
somewhere in that vicinity. Yeah. Oh, okay. Moving on though, we have properties we probably could lease, I think leasing is a great opportunity to make money because we still hold on to our properties, and we're making money while we are doing it. With the JERS, we have a lot involved with JERS, a lot of involvement. We have the housing authorities and so forth involved in that. And we probably need to take a deeper dive and look into the things that we really need to do to make JERS successful. Because if we're going to K-8 or whatever the committee decides to do, it's important that the board members and the staff understands what's coming out of the committee. So we may need, I know you're saying now I'm making a lot of workshops, but we may need to do a workshop on that also to help out so we could understand what's going on at JERS and what's going on with affordable housing so we can get a huge picture and we'll understand as a team all together and not have nits and bits and pieces there. So I like to make that suggestion also. But moving along here, our developed properties, like Pennant City areas, they're growing a great deal, aren't they, Mr. Farkas?
Yes, sir. And so that's why you've seen the board purchase 2 50-acre plots and a 16-acre plot in the last 18 months for Plant City. So north of Plant City, north of I-4, that used to be nothing but farmlands, there's 5,000 homes that have been approved north of I-4. And they're in shovels in the ground, building homes right now and starting to have that part of it too. So it is, to Ms. Rendon's point, we know what we need. We have the property to do that, but the finances that go along with it are the bigger challenges. Impact fees, how quickly they come in and how quickly they accumulate so we can build that. So yes, Plant City is a huge growth area. They're running out of plats, which are what the homes are in the southern part of the county. That will be moved out to Plant City unless they change the urban service corridor, which it's different. That's a county conversation, not ours. But to your point, yes, Plant City is the biggest growth area after South County, and it's planned out and done.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Member Washington. Thank you. I requested this workshop because I think one of the most important things that we have, obviously, it's the safety and education, but our fiscal responsibility as a district. So I think this is just the beginning. I think you're going to have to engage with the board members a lot. We're going to have to continue doing workshops. What I want to walk away with today or somewhat is some type of timeline to look at things. The one thing I realize is things take a long time when you're working with the government. So we need to make sure that we are doing this and making sure we really engage. I have a lot to share as long with all of this. First of all is, we are one of the largest entities here in Hillsborough County. We're a $4 billion entity. So although we're in education, we also need to look at ourselves as a business and how we're going to invest. And we are large property owners. So I just have a few thoughts and a few ideas that I wanted to share because this is something that I've been thinking about for a long time. I think it's taken me a couple years to come here and really learn about what's going on in the district. First and foremost is we have to right-size this district. We have to be fiscally conservative, and we cannot keep schools open that are under-enrolled with a couple hundred students. When I go to schools where there's a principal that is leading 1,000 students, and then you have principals that are leading 200 students, when we're losing our administrators to Pinellas County and Pasco County because they're getting paid $15,000, $20,000 more. We have to look at, when you have a small school, you have a lot of overhead of a principal, assistant principal, bookkeeper, librarian, resource officer, ESE specialist, lunch. I mean, I could go on and on and on. So we really need to right-size the district, and that's got to be very, very important because at the end of the day, we have to pay our administrators, our teachers, our faculty, our bus drivers, our secretaries more because this is the most important job is to educate children. And I'm hearing over and over on the news, we're even short of substitutes, short of ESE specialists. So that's the number one thing is really looking at these under-enrolled schools and right-sizing. Looking at our warehouses, all this excess property and ROSAC and buildings. Number two is absolutely lease. We cannot sell. I mean, to me, when I look at $20 million for a parking garage, when our payroll is $55 to $60 million every 2 weeks, That makes no sense. We should not sell a single property. We have to lease. That is our biggest asset. Any investor is going to want to come and take any land. And half an acre, I am strongly opposed to selling anything. I am a firm believer of leasing all the way through. Our property is the most important. Not only that, interest rates are so high right now. Why would anyone even think about selling? With interest rates being so high, we absolutely have to, look at leasing our land. Third, and most importantly, is we're here because we're trying to provide the best education for our students. We know that parents want different choices right now. Parent choice is the biggest thing that families want, and that is not going to change with that generation. So we need to really think outside the box of different ideas. Affordable housing is one part. When you talk, partnerships with the Urban League or Tampa Housing Authority, places like that. In order to when I look at Shake's area and I look at my area, what is the biggest problem is attracting teachers, the best teachers. When you have House Bill 1 coming and parents are going to choose the best choice for them, it's going to come down to where is the best teachers. And so when you look at schools like Just Elementary, where half the teachers were subs, how can you tell a community individual their child is getting the best education when that's absolutely not true? When you have kids going 4 or 5 years through elementary and never having a certified, highly qualified teacher. So I think affordable housing needs to be connected with our most urban schools, the schools that need the most help. So if somebody's living in an affordable housing unit, they have to commit to working in our schools that are highest risk, where kids need the most support. So I think that's really, really important. And finally, something that we need to think outside the box is district-run charter schools when we have these excessive properties. Think about this. These charters have all the flexibility. They get the PICO dollars. Now they're going to get capital outlay dollars. They don't have the same restrictions, the same rules we have. I think about Member Vaughn, who often talks about, Montessori schools. Let's get some of these under-enrolled schools and let's think outside the box and let's run district-run charters that have their own separate boards and let's go ahead and compete. Because the one thing I know is that we are at the very bottom for funding at the state level, and that is not going to change. I mean, the idea that we're going to get maybe 5% next year when we have the highest rate of inflation in the country, we need to have our own ideas of how we are going to bring money to our district and how we're going to generate funding that's reoccurring funding and how we're going to get the best teachers there. The one thing I think is really important is today that we walk away with a plan that how you're going to engage with each board member with these ideas and suggestions. Then how we're going to come back and work on this. Because for me, although I know you worked hard on this, to me this was very thin. This information, I need so much more than this. This is one of probably the most important things for me as a board member, is fiscal responsibility and providing a great education, and those go hand in hand. And with all the properties, I don't need to sit there and talk about this little property and that little property. I want to talk about it a big and a holistic way and really come up with fiscally conservative decisions that are going to generate money to bring back to pay our employees and to pay our teachers. This week alone, we've lost 2 of our administrators to neighboring districts. We have to do something to make sure we secure. Our number one thing is safety, providing students the best education, and fiscal responsibility. This is very tied to that. And the one thing I was going to say over and over, and I think when I first came on, I was very apprehensive about ROSAC. The more I look at it, the more I think everybody at ROSAC, what we've learned through COVID, they can work at schools. Let's get people out of these buildings and into schools. Because at the end of the day, that's what kids need. They need bodies. They need people out there. You don't know if it's going to be a bus driver, an office assistant, but we've learned that we don't have to be in a building to work. We can work remotely. We can work in schools. Let's make sure, look at these excess properties. We don't want to hand these properties to anyone. That's why we have to think outside the box with district-run charters. Not only that, with the district-run charters, we would generate grants, probably $500,000 just to have our own, right? We get those grants. And then we're going to get all kinds of additional money. And guess what? There's going to be flexibility that we've been trying to beg the legislation from. So let's do it ourselves. Let's think outside the box. Let's do things that are going to really generate money and help our district. Thank you. Member Gray?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, and all board members who have made very important remarks and moving forward. Direction, Mr. Farkas, Ms. Orton, we have here just a little schematic possibility, a little bit of information. And the 5-year plan, which is on our agenda, has a little bit more solid. I would have hoped that the 5-year plan would have been in this packet. All right, but nonetheless, we're looking at direction. Where do you go next? Let me start out with a workshop. Workshops provide information. They provide up-to-date relevancy and the fiscal management of our district. So workshops every time are critical. I would say, just to envelope the conversation, that we're looking at future attractors, and that's the name of the workshop. So we would have affordable housing in it. We'd have childcare. Now, Van Ayers, Superintendent Ayers is out. I don't know where he went, but he needs to be here. Okay, well, this needs to be recorded because every one of the board remarks needs to be heard by the superintendent. I would say the workshop should include affordable housing, childcare, K through 8, and repurposing. Those are all attractors for our district. Make no mistake, we are being defunded. We have a lifeline, maybe, of 3 to 5 years of district ability to pay our bills. There's no nice way of saying it. If we don't become competitive with other, say, charters or private schools, homeschool, and I've worked for every one of those entities, we will not sustain as a district. That's it. So when we talk about ways to be competitive, I mean, I'm dead serious. Number one, we need to go ahead and say to ourselves now, not later, our referendum is done in 4 years. Our capital funds sharing with charter schools will be at 11 million and growing. So if we're minusing those two incomes, 21 million per month average on the referendum, average, or maybe 20 million. If we're minus 20 million, we're minus another $11 million, then we have serious repercussions. And Superintendent Ayers, I'm mentioning your name. You really need to be here for board comments. When we're missing those funds, and I don't know when this is going to happen, when we're going to go out for another referendum, just for the building maintenance, et cetera, that needs to be shown on a chart for all board members to see what happens when we are without the building and delayed maintenance and with the growing amount of capital funds being taken away, and versus where we're at, we do have the funds for 4 more years. Buildings, and I don't have to tell you guys, planning for buildings takes years. We can't even plan for buildings unless we know we're going to have the funds. It's, you can buy all the property, and you did, and it's a great job. Doesn't mean a darn thing unless you can build on it. I mean, we have it. Now, second point, we talk about K through 8 as being the way to go. Not really. Mary Ellen Elia, we worked on middle school conversions in the 1980s, and Farkas, you remember that. We worked on it for years. I was on the task force, and the reason was to become more competitive and to unify the 7th grade centers at Young. We had schools that had all types of personalities. We wanted to unify, and it was a great idea, and it was a movement. It went all over the United States. Middle schools, yay. And Mary Ellen Elia, former superintendent, did a great job. She spent years on town halls and everything else. We worked hard. All right, fast forward. What we have now is community input. Communities want to see more of our schools. They want the stabilities. K through 8 is designed to keep communities involved with this, with the actual, their children, the benefits of the learning, the consistency. It's not going to fit everything. When we talk about Apollo Beach, we talk about it lightly. I'm a district-wide. I can tell you right now, and we did talk to Representative Beltran, we did talk to the flood folks. Chris has been very, very sophisticatedly in talks. We're not talking just about putting a K through 8. We're talking maturing as 6th grade, then going to the 7th, and gradually going to the 8th. Nothing is sudden. The reality is Eisenhower does not have the perceptual ability to draw students. It is what it is. K through 8s don't fit every, Gibsonton Elementary, do we want a K through 8? No. Ruskin Elementary, do we want, all those are highly needs. Doesn't fit everything, but the ones that we have, Lutz, Piso, Roland, are doing wonderful. Their grades are up, and that data you should share, because that's a question that has been on this board. Third, Roszak. We talked about Roszak. Should we lease? Should we sell? Well, the public went crazy, and I know you all know that. But the idea of leasing, to me, is very, very sustainable. We all are concerned about sustainable income. Well, hell, why don't you go ahead and lease the second 2 floors and keep the first 2 floors for Roszak? Most of those offices are empty. We got the ISC. Why didn't we not consolidate? Well, we have a new superintendent, so that's a direction that we should look at. Leasing land. We always think, where are we going to get the money? Well, leasing will give you the latitude of income. Once you sell it, someone will make a lot of money. Right now, land is very tempting, but the interest rates, thank you, Member Combs, are very high. But we need money. We need it now. We need it much more quicker than later. Last, an overview. Someone said something about affordable housing. Member Washington. We have Fentress Driscoll, an organization, big time, that's working on affordable housing. We have a nonprofit with Overman, formerly a county commissioner. There's 2 nonprofits that are working diligently to bring upon affordable housing. But the question still is begging us, should we as a district get involved with that? That's a lot of variables, but we should have a workshop on it, because what is affordable housing? And I agree. Child care, you want direction. Here's what I think. I think we need direction on child care at Plant City, which has wanted it. We can definitely think about Sickles, but we need to start being competitive. And one thing I can tell you right now, you put a child care center, and I know there are laws, but Principal Combs, what's the principal's name? Larissa McCoy and Tommy Morrill are very well versed in the laws of getting a child care center. And last, leasing. We talked about leasing. I think I'm hearing from other board members that is truly a better option than selling. So there's your direction. And the repurposing of buildings that are getting empty, that's a very political concept, because if we say closing a school, that's like a nightmare statement. So I'm not ready to say that, but I am ready to say we need to darn well start consolidating our heads off. And that's what a K through 8 does. So you've got to start consolidating versus closing. And you've got to listen to the communities, because they're the final analysis. They're the ones that are going to help our children also. We can only do so much, but we have to rely on the community, the parents, to help become part of the school again. PTAs are so central to the viability of a school and to a child's academic progress. And I think finally, Superintendent Ayers, I don't want to go for just survival. I want us to go for excellence. I want every school to shine and to be, whether you put a magnet on it, when I say magnet, whether it becomes a magnet, a STEM, whatever. And Mr. Farkas, I'm a competitor, and that's where I'm coming from. I want us to fight the good fight. I want us to last. And I'm thinking also, Mr. Farkas, you have a 5-year plan. By the time our referendum monies go for delayed maintenance, this is not going to be a true 5-year plan. So we can't even go for 5 years. So you better think of, I don't mean to talk to you like that, I'm so sorry. But we better think not 5 years, we got to think 4 years now, because that is a big turning point. Mr. Farkas, I yapped all this time. Can you make a remark on anything I said before I go to the next board meeting?
We definitely have a fear. We definitely have a fear and are planning for the 4 years from now. And you asked, one of the questions was when we'd go back out. Obviously, it's board direction, but 26, the general election in 26 is when we go back out for reauthorization if the board's desire to do so. And the board's talked about it a bunch. Citizens Oversight and the group that does that work, I think, has been very accountable for where those dollars have gone. So I think that's going to be a viable campaign to do that. But we have some other conversations before that. But to answer your question, the November 26 is when we look at reauthorization, and then the board could dictate what those terms are and kind of what we wanted to do to pose that question.
So we'll put that down on direction. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Member Gray. Member Washington?
That was quick. Okay, a couple of things I need to bring to your attention about the child care. Child care is very important. I could recall in 2002 when Milton opened up, we had child care over there, and we had a lot. Yeah, we did. We put in child care, and it was also for the teachers, and if any students had any kids, they could bring them there, and it was very successful. So people really looks into that a great deal. It works perfect. Just an addition, and I really need to say this. You know, we talk about closing schools, but you got to remember, back in the day when the segregation was going on, we had schools stacked on top of schools, and the purpose of that was because they did not want the black kids going to the white facilities. That was the purpose of it. So we had a lot of schools stacked on top of each other. So now, because of affordable housing, people are moving out. So a lot of those schools will not have the enrollment, and I think we need to look at that, because we won't never have a perfect enrollment now, the way things are going now, because of how people are moving out the inner city areas. So that's just a thought to keep in mind. But I guess I'm old and I know a lot about some things that we possibly looking at now that came about back in the day. And we really need to take a deep dive and look into it and not just jump into it. Just look at the history of it. And sometimes that helps you to be successful. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I'm going to just say a couple more things, and I think then we're done with our comments for today. But as I think you can hear that really overall people want to lease. We know that that's our biggest asset is land, and that this board does not want to say. I know there's a couple board members you still hear from, but we already have at least 4 that say really the direction we want to do is leasing. And just like Mr. Washington was saying, you know, it's just very hard when I go to a school and there's 190 students in a school. We just, that is just not, it's not good business practice. I feel very, very bad for the teachers, really bad for the students there, but we also have to think about the generation of students that maybe aren't getting the right education, because you're keeping a school, just because a school's open doesn't mean that they're providing the best education when you have a shortage of teachers and you have half the teachers that are substitutes. That is not a quality education. And when you look at House Bill 1 coming, which is going to provide parents a lot of choices and flexibility, you have to tell that parent that is the best school in your community. That's why you have to go there. And if you have a lot of substitute teachers, you cannot say that. So I think that's really important. We have to really think about education in a completely different perspective than we ever have. Number 2, I think we know that we want to look at affordable housing and what that looks like and what the options are. And I think it's really, some of that has to be linked with having the best teachers in those schools that are the highest risk Title I schools. You know, just today when I was walking up, I saw one of the principals right by here, and I said, how are you doing today? She said, well, my biggest issue is I'm looking for 3 more teachers. So our principals are sitting there trying to recruit teachers. Well, that wouldn't be an issue if we were able to pay people more, so that way we could find those teachers. Number 3, I really want to look into that district-run charters. I talked to Dr. DeLange earlier, and we talked about how there's going to be a startup, $500,000 grants for startup. You have a school that's already done, you can have that free grant, you can get those PICO dollars, you can have flexibility with the curriculum, you can do all the things that everybody can do that we can't do under being a public school. And then number 4 is really looking at that research with K through 8. I can say, as a person who's worked in middle school for most of my life, that middle school K through 8 does work. I mean, when I look at my schools, how do I know that it's working? Well, I look at 2 things. I look at academic success, and you're seeing kids who are in K through 8 are really striving and doing well academically. And number 2, you look at parent satisfaction, and that's what parents are wanting. So I think you have to listen to the community. And if you look at that research, you're seeing that is a trend, because students are actually doing well academically. They're happier, there's less issues, and most importantly, that's what parents want, and that drives it. You know, it doesn't matter what kind of coffee you have if nobody's going there. If that's what parents want, that's what we have to listen to. We have to listen to families and see what they want. And then finally is just making sure you engage the board, and that we have a real serious timeline on that, because that's one of the biggest things I find that's frustrating, that things take so long to get done. We talk about something, and then 2-3 years later we're kind of moving, and we really need to look at ROSAC. And when Member Gray, you talk about the first floor, when I think about ROSAC, I think about that whole building should be demolished. I mean, the air doesn't work, there's so many problems with that building, I mean, it's an ugly building, do you know what I mean? But it's worth a lot of money. That land is worth so much. You can go vertical, and you can take a floor or 2, because we do want to keep a presence downtown. We have the parking garage, we have Rampello, we have the district. We do want to have a presence downtown, but what does that presence look like? And if that presence can generate a lot of funding so we can pay people, then that's the most important thing. As I said, we need to really start thinking outside the box and being really creative on how we can best service our students and best make sure that, when you're looking at teachers who are paid 49th and 50, I think only West Virginia and South Dakota veteran teachers are paid more than us. We have to do something, because we're losing people. And most importantly is, I think that we have to let our constituents and our voters know that we're being fiscally responsible, because if we're asking for a referendum, if we're asking for anything from the voters, they have to know that we're making the tough choices and we're making fiscally hard decisions, because we've got to look at non-instructional, non-productive real estate. That's warehouses, all of those things, and make sure that we're making really good decisions. That's a big task for all of you. I mean, you may have to get an RFP and work on that, because, this is a very big task, but there's billions of dollars connected to that. So I think it's really, really important to look at that. And that's all I have. And Superintendent Ayers, if you have anything else?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Combs. I just wanted to kind of summarize, and we talked about a lot of things today. So I think what we'll do is, Mr. Farkas, you and I will kind of get together and put together some ideas and some bullet points of some next steps to the entire board, so we can kind of get some further direction. But I think what I did here today is we talked about lease versus selling. I think majority of the board really wants us to look at options for leasing, so I want to thank the board for that. We talk about K-8s. I just want to, we do as a district listen to our families. I was just jotting down, let's not forget about Cary Ward, Turner Balteros, Lutz, Maniscalco, Tinker back in the day. When our families want a particular type of school, we do listen to our families. So I don't want to make the mistake here and think that we just don't listen to our families, because I have a list of schools that we go through and we listen to our families and meet those needs, because in the end we want to keep our students in our school district. That in the end is what we're about. I know that we provide the best quality education. I want our families to choose Hillsborough County Public Schools. The affordable housing workshop, we'll get that on, because that is something, Mr. Washington, that I want to hear some more information about, so we can do that. We'll get that scheduled. And I just again want to thank the board, and I'll kind of take and summarize all this. When you have a topic as large as this is, it kind of gets all over the place. So we'll kind of dwindle it down, get those key points, and then have a plan of action direction for each of our board members moving forward. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Farkas and Ms. Orton, and everybody else for growth management and the operations. All of you have done there's so much work ahead, but I appreciate all your hard work, because not only this, you're dealing with air conditioners and everything else in between that. So thank you, and everyone have a great day. This meeting is adjourned.